What's up, everyone? Good morning. Welcome in. This is Betting Above the Rim College Basketball Today with Tom Vecchio. I am Adam Kaufman, and the Elite Eight, Tommy, it's set, baby. We had a couple of thrillers late night for anyone that stayed up. I mean late, like almost 1 a.m. East Coast time. By the time everything wrapped up, I'm sure you were glued to it. Here's the deal. And I'm going to talk about this a lot later on. I'm excited about it. People want to complain about the lack of Cinderellas. I am into the chalk. Here's what we've got. All four top seeds still alive. 3-2 seeds, 1-3 seed. That combination, seeding-wise, is the lowest total since 2007. What do you think of the group we have right now?
Yeah, we've had some amazing games over the past 2 days, overtime, buzzer beaters or near buzzer beaters. I am of the belief that people want to see Cinderellas. They want to see upsets to an extent, right? Like we want to have that excitement in the first few rounds. We want to have a story that we can attach to and really like root for, especially if your team doesn't make it, the team that you bet on loses, whatever it might be. But ultimately, we want to see the best basketball being played at the highest level. Like, the argument I would make is like, obviously take things to the extreme. It's like, do we want to see UNC Wilmington versus UAB like in the Final Four? Like, no, we want to see the best basketball. So people complaining about like, oh, there's no more Cinderellas. I think we want to see that excitement to an extent. But ultimately, we want to see the best possible matchups. And we have 8 of the 9 teams when it comes to the highest rated in KenPom. So, like, we have the literal best basketball that we could possibly want. We're going to have that, not just, today and tomorrow, but really we've had that over the past few days. So I am all for seeing these best teams come out and give us awesome games.
Like you said, man, only heavyweights remain here. Each team, as far as those KenPom ratings, is top 23 in offensive rating. Each is top 39 in defensive rating. The only one missing, because again, we said 8 of the top 9 are still alive. Only one missing is Gonzaga, who might have been overrated to begin with. Favorites 8-0 straight up in the Sweet 16. First time that has happened going back to 1985. 4-4 against the spread, 4-4 in terms of totals over under as well. Favorites of 6+ points so far, 30-2 straight up in this year's tournament, and 44-12 overall, 30-26 against the spread. To throw you some more numbers just to consider going into today and tomorrow's Elite Eight action, unders have been the story here in the tourney. It's favorites, it's unders. Unders are hitting at a roughly 56.5% clip. 31-24-1. Another interesting thing, we always like to look back on, the SEC tournament or regular season matchups. Oh, what did they do when they saw each other in November? That type of thing. The 4 combinations that we have in front of us between today and tomorrow, none of these teams have faced each other yet. So this is going to be a first meeting of the season between these heavyweights, which obviously is insanely exciting. I mean, again, in the West, we've got Texas Tech, a 3 seed against number 1 Florida, who a lot of people early on are saying lay the points, take the 6.5. We've got in the East, 2 Alabama against number 1 Duke. My God, the potential for offense in this game, and what will Cooper Flagg, the future number 1 overall pick in the upcoming NBA draft, do? Is Duke the same level of powerhouse that we have seen each of the last couple of years from UConn, who, as we know, took Florida to the limit before ultimately getting ousted? In the Midwest, these games tomorrow, number 2 Tennessee against number 1 Houston, both these teams who had to survive. Houston more so, obviously, last night against Purdue, a game that it looked like they were going to run away with, and it came down to an unbelievable play, inbound pass, final seconds, bucket with about 0.9 left for the Cougars to move on to tomorrow, and Michigan State against Auburn. That should be a lot of fun in the South as well tomorrow night, and these games sprinkled across the United States. As we jump into today, and we'll do a look back at the bracket a little bit more so as we go on in terms of how exactly we got to this point. But when it comes to Texas Tech and Florida, are you with the consensus? Do you believe the Gators, this is really their game to lose, and that the, any sort of a plucky underdog story we would like to give a 3 seed in Texas Tech ends here today?
I've been on board with Florida as being either the number 1 team in the country or right behind Duke, kind of like a 1A, 1B. really since January. Like, we know what we're getting from Florida. I'm inclined to take the points with Texas Tech, especially take them early. I think we'd all agree that Florida is the better team overall. So my theory coming into this game, or my thesis essentially coming into that, I think Texas Tech, if they're in it early and they can cover the first half, I think they'll be in it for the majority of the game. But if Florida gets out and they're running and they got the offense moving, I think they could win this game by 10 points. So Texas Tech, they have to be in it early or they won't be in it at all. I want to lean on a lot of unders, as we've seen. Now, you said, unders are hitting at 56% or roughly thereabouts. It's weird to say that when we have Alabama and Duke coming up later and these teams are pouring in 100-plus points seemingly every game, Alabama hitting 1,000,000 threes. But when it comes to Texas Tech and Florida, I want to say going with the points with Florida is the right way to go. Like, they are just so dominant from start to finish. They have all the pieces that you want. They have good guard play. They're big. They have good bench play. I think that's where I'm going to be leaning. I think Florida's the answer. It's really as simple as that. Texas Tech is good, but they're not as good as Florida.
Texas Tech's path, and how dare you mock teams of the caliber of UNC Wilmington, but that is exactly who the Red Raiders knocked out in the opening round. They won by 10 in that 3-14 matchup. Moved on. A lot of people were on Drake. This is another one of the wannabe Cinderellas, the 11 seed. Yeah. Drake's live for the upset. Take Drake plus 6.5, all that stuff. Nope, Texas Tech dismantled them, won by 13. Where things got dicey, obviously, was a couple nights ago against Arkansas in that 3-10 matchup that Texas Tech had to rally to come back. This was a 2-point win. Texas Tech in that one was, down 16 points in the second half before coming back, obviously winning in overtime. Over the last 25 years, a dozen teams have won a sweep game in OT, and then 9 failed to cover the spread in the Elite Eight, which again tells me in part, whether that's again emotional letdown or physical letdown, there's not a lot of breathing room, a lot of recovery time, and a superior team in this particular case on the other side, who, like you said, there are a lot of people that going into the tournament believe that Florida, not Duke, should have been the number 1 overall seed. This is the team that is going to advance at the very least to the national title game and maybe win the whole thing. If you just believe in Florida just to get to the Final Four, then Texas Tech probably is not going to be right there to get things done today. And plus, there is the injury factor. We do not know, as it sits right now, whether Chance McMillan is going to be available in this game. He's been sidelined dealing with the oblique strain. Clearly, the offense is, very good, but not the same without him. It's just another thing to support taking the Gators here.
Right. And part of me wants to say, I could see this game playing out largely as we did see Florida versus Maryland, where it was close in the first half. It was a 40-38 at halftime between Florida and Maryland. And then ultimately Florida pulls away because they are the better team. They just have more talent, more depth. And that's how I realistically can see this playing out, where we're talking about 3-4 points at halftime, but that attrition will wear on Texas Tech. And again, if you want to buy into those things like an overtime game, some of these trends that we have to support taking Florida, that's really where it will come through, where the final few minutes, I don't want to say it's the same thing as we saw with Florida versus UConn, but Florida's the better team. And when push comes to shove, an extra possession here or there, they will look to get it done, and they will end up getting it done.
Yeah, I just also really believe that game that I mentioned against UConn, where the 2-time defending champion Huskies came awfully close late in that game to knocking off the Gators, that could have gone a couple of ways. Is Florida for real, or is it a wake-up call? And then we see them go out and trounce Maryland, obviously, by 16 points. I think it was a wake-up call. You look back under Todd Golden's Gators here, top 4 matchups against top 10 teams over the last 6 weeks. Wins over Auburn, Alabama twice, of course, Tennessee. The Gators have won 9 straight, and they have won these games in emphatic fashion by at least 15 points. Much more on this one, other games to come when we return.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back here. Vecchio, Kaufman, guests on the way over these couple hours. Should be a lot of fun to break down, obviously, the Elite Eight. A special focus on the 2 games today, but we will hit on the 2 tomorrow as well. But you've got loads of time across the SportsGrid network to dive into those. So again, emphasis on today, but it's just exciting to see all this chalk. Again, people want to gripe about it. I'm into it, and I will explain more a little bit later on as to why it's something you should probably get used to. But again, more on Florida and Texas Tech. So I mentioned, obviously, the dominance of late by these Gators. Just to give you some more specifics with this, Tom. So 9-2 against the spread, Florida against ranked teams this year. 5-1 outright against teams that landed with a 2 seed or higher. So they have not only been dominant throughout the year, they've beaten the best. And conversely, the Red Raiders just 2-5 against teams with a 4 seed or higher and only covered once. We have Florida at 6.5. I already said I would take the points, or lay the points, if you will. You inclined to be sitting in the same direction, but 157.5. This right here is the second highest total on the board, and by a long margin, because Duke, Alabama, we'll get into, has a very high total, and then the 2 tomorrow are both lower than this one. How do you feel about the 157.5 with people right now betting toward the over?
Yeah, we were talking about this during the break. Florida's a team that we have seen consistently go out and drop 80 points seemingly before you know it. They can push towards 100. They can do it all on offense. The question becomes is at what point does this become somewhat of a game script thing, which is, something we've discussed over really this entire year, especially when it comes to something like football. At a certain point, if Florida is going to be covering, as we expect, or at least you and I expect, do they really need to be pushing the pace? As great as their offense is, at a certain point, they want to reel things in and just focus on getting the win. So I can see them slowing the game down in those final 8 minutes if they are up by 10 or so points, which I do expect them to be. Do they really need to continue to push the offense? Because we've seen plenty of points on them, against the first round, plenty of points versus UConn, but I expect them to slow the game down at a certain point. So the total, I think, would be more interesting from a live perspective. If we do see things start off a little bit slow, Texas Tech keep things close to the vest. If we get this at like a 150 number, 149.5, taking the live over is far more interesting to me than a direct over of 156.5. So I actually want to wait for that. That's at least how I'm viewing it now.
Over in the East here, Tom, you have Duke against Alabama, a 1 seed, obviously, in the Blue Devils, Bama 2 seed. This is a game. I just can't believe we're getting this game in the Elite Eight. There are people out there that would be perfectly, content, even excited if this were your national championship matchup, obviously. And the numbers are insanely close. Each team is scoring about 94 points per game. Duke shoots marginally better, 57% versus 54 overall, 47% from three versus 43 overall. But in saying that, what Alabama just did against BYU, I mean, holy mackerel. 25 made three-pointers in that game. That is an NCAA tournament record, obviously, in the Sweet 16. They scored 117 points, the most points we've seen in a tourney game in 17 years. Also, scoring at about a 60% rate from two-point range here, which is third in the nation just in general. So it comes down to, in many ways, do you think Duke's the better team? Wouldn't blame you for feeling that way. I do. But the question is, defensively, how do you contain Bama?
That's a good question. Bama plays super fast. They're hitting, like I said, 1 million threes at a certain point. I think they're shooting too much in terms of effectiveness. In that game versus BYU, 53% from the field, and like you said, 25-51 from deep. So I expect the scoring to be there, relatively speaking, when it comes to these offenses. I don't expect them to be pushing over 100 points, neither of them. I don't expect either of them to be pushing towards 90 points. I actually do like the under in this game. As crazy as that sounds, Bama plays super fast. Duke actually plays slow. They were 266 in Ken Palm adjusted pace, and Bama was number 1. So, these are two completely different teams of what we should be expecting. Duke has an awesome defense, and frankly, Bama's defense is actually a lot better than people realize. So I like the under, and I don't think Alabama wants to turn this into a track meet. As much as that's what their style is, I think they know the level of offense that Duke can bring. And do you want to increase the variance and turn this into like a punch for punch game? No, you want to decrease the variance and have fewer possessions for such an amazing offense for Duke that was number 1 per Ken Palm. So the only way to take away Duke's strength is actually to decrease the amount of possessions that they have and keep the ball away from them.
Here's what I think should concern Alabama about Duke when it comes to Duke's elite offense, but also Alabama in terms of any defensive holes. It feels like the thing that we're not talking about coming out of this game, Alabama against BYU. It's Bama, 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 and all the celebration of what they did offensively. On the other side, BYU still put up 88 points. That's a big number. We saw teams struggle to score 60 yesterday, elite offenses or capable offenses. BYU put up 88 points and was only 6 of 30 from three-point range, made 1 three-pointer in the opening half. How did they do it? BYU was 20 of 26 on close shots, had 13 offensive rebounds. This Duke offense, and you just hit on it with some of the metrics, is far better than BYU. So Alabama should be concerned about the inside.
They should, and again, how do you prevent that from happening? You don't. If they would have, if this game would end with 190 points, 180 points, that means there's way too many possessions back and forth, and there's just too many chances for Duke to flex what they're best at, and that's scoring. And that's not just scoring, that's scoring and beating you by 10, 15, 20 points, as we've seen them do all season long. So again, as fast as Alabama likes to play, I think they have to try and slow things down. They have to try and change their style at least a little bit. This is not to say that they shouldn't be shooting threes. They shouldn't be looking to at least keep up with the scoring with Duke, but you do not want to turn this into a game that ends with 185 total points. At least that's how I'm viewing it from an Alabama perspective. I do think Alabama can cover. Again, a 6.5 number is something that I like. I lean towards Alabama, and I am on the under.
Would you rather bet a team total versus a full game total?
Probably. We'd have to dig into those. We can get into those into the next segment as we're coming up against a break, but we can talk about the team totals other side.
All right, we'll look at some of those, present them to you, see what the best way is, again, to bet this game that has a massive total, 174.5 between Duke and Alabama. And whereas Tom likes the under, I'm rooting for the over. It's not that I'm rooting against his wallet, but I am rooting for entertainment. I mean, that Alabama-BYU game, we had 80 points by the 4-minute mark.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back with you here. We're talking about Duke and Bama. We're going to have Rob Donaldson join us, professional handicapper, coming up in just a little bit. Look forward to chatting with him, breaking down some of these games. But we were exploring team totals. Again, 174.5 is the overall game total, and I'm sure a lot of people, at least the betting public, maybe not the sharps, will be invested in the over, coming off of what we've seen from, quite frankly, both of these teams and just the ability to put up points. Again, these are two offenses that score roughly 94, 95 points per game. It is outrageous. It's egregious. It is wildly entertaining. It is defense optional. Bama, team total in this one is well below that. 83.5 here, Tom, whereas Duke comes in at 90.5. So if you like the under for the full game, as we were talking about before, is there an over that you would want to explore for the team that you believe will win?
So I want to say I like the under on Duke at 90.5, which I know their offense can get out there and score 100 points. I understand that. But like I said, I do lean on Alabama at least keeping things close and the under overall. So if that's going to happen, I think Alabama will do their best to limit Duke offensively. Like, I think that's their game plan. I don't think Alabama wants to turn this into a game that they try and win 90 to 90, 95 to 90, whatever it might be. I think they have to, again, keep things close to the vest. So I would actually look at the Duke team total under 90.5, and I would keep an eye on the total overall. I saw it open up at 173. It did touch 175.5. It's down to 174. So if it jumps back up to 175.5, listen, I'm already on under 172.5, so I'll be looking to be back in at under 175. I think the Duke team total is just too high. For where we are in the tournament, for how Alabama should be looking to play this game, under 90.5 would be a spot to go.
Let's take a look at some of Cooper Flagg's game props here in this game and how people can consider betting him. Again, top freshman, one of the top players in the country. He's going to be the #1 overall pick in the upcoming draft, as we talked about. You can see right there his over-under, 24.5 points, 7.5 rebounds. Assists are coming in at 4.5. That PRA, 38.5. Now, this is a dude who, over his last few games, as he has gotten healthier, because remember, a little banged up there at the end of the ACC tournament. So against Arizona, in a game, by the way, that Duke put up 100 points. We've seen 189 and 93 while we're talking team totals throughout this tournament run. Cooper Flagg erupted last game. He went for 30 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. The game before that, 18, 6, and 9, respectively, 14, 5, and 7, as he was finding his way back in that first game in the 116 matchup. So he has gotten progressively better, as we have seen here, Tom, throughout this tournament run. Where, if anywhere, would you want to invest in Flagg?
I think looking at like the points are obviously where they are, but the more I think about it, do the rebounds and assist market make the most sense? It's 12.5. It is minus 140 to the over, but if I'm expecting limited scoring overall, hopefully we will see more rebounds here or there. I think the rebounds plus assist market may be the best. And again, I lean on the under. I would want to take an under on Cooper Flagg, but I don't know if I'll actually pull the trigger on that one up. But I do like the over rebounds and assists. He can get there in terms of filling up the stat sheet. Like, I don't want to say like a mini LeBron. Obviously, those are very lofty comparisons, but he can do it all outside of scoring. I think that's what ultimately will help Duke win the game. So I don't know if I'm just convincing myself that rebounds and assists are the most interesting for Cooper Flagg prop tonight.
Yeah, I just think that Cooper Flagg is a guy that can beat you in so many different ways. However, we know that it's not the Cooper Flagg show necessarily. Duke is a well-rounded offensive machine, and so maybe I'm foolish in saying so. PRA would be the way that I would go after Flagg, because I just don't know how he's going to get you. That's the thing. I don't know if we're going to be looking at 30 plus points, if we're going to be looking at, is a double in play. Now, those are very rare for him, admittedly, because remember, these are shorter games than you get in the NBA. It's not like you're going to see too many guys out there averaging doubles, but how often is he going to give you the 20 and 10 games? We saw it a couple times late in the regular season, obviously have not seen it yet in the tournament, but even still, if he gets you in that range, we saw 43 PRA last game, again, totaling it out, about 25 the game before that, and went north of 30, or I should say about 35 the game before that. So he's in and around that 38.5 number. I would look for him to go over, and I like Duke to win this game. Feel like it doesn't put me in the minority. They are the favored team here in this one. The overall point spread, by the way, which we didn't spend as much time on, same as Florida, laying 6.5 here, the Blue Devils, which does, I will admit, even though I like Duke to win this game, feels like a lot given how explosive Alabama is on the other side. This one could absolutely come down to the wire. We will get Rob Donaldson's thoughts on it when we come on back here. Stay with us on SportsGrid.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket. Until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, we are back here on Betting Above the Rim, college basketball today on SportsGrid with Tom Vecchio, Adam Kaufman. We welcome in our first guest to the program, and he has been a regular of late talking college hoops on SportsGrid. That is Rob Donaldson, professional handicapper. Get him on Twitter at RobDFB. Rob, we were just talking off the air about the really fun thing about the tourney right now is that I know a lot of people miss the Cinderella element of it. You don't have that 11 seed that's still alive in the Elite Eight. You have nothing but top 3 seeds, including all top, the number ones, all available still, 3-2s and the 1-3. But what's great about it is now we are getting the best of the best. We should get some great games down the stretch. You don't have anybody laying 10 points this round or anything like that. But ultimately, we do have some really interesting games, obviously, in front of us today, where we've got Texas Tech and Florida. Texas Tech is the closest thing to a Cinderella that we have as the lone 3 seed, but not only that, the way they are playing and the heroics that they've displayed late in games. We saw it most recently in the overtime win, coming back big against Arkansas to knock them off, and of course a little bit later on a game that, as I said earlier, people would love as a championship game, never mind an Elite Eight game, and that is Duke against Alabama. How you enjoying everything involving the tourney so far as we enter this stage?
You know what? I think the notion that because there were lack of upsets in round 1 and in the round of 32, the Sweet 16 was poised to be a banger, and it really was, notably on that second day, right? We had a lot of great games. Heck, even on the first day, we had Texas Tech and Arkansas go into overtime, and that was a fantastic game with a fantastic comeback. And now, to your point, we're in the Elite Eight on a short turnaround from the Sweet 16. And I feel like because there are so many great teams kind of pooled together in this, 8-team remaining field, I do feel like it's going to be the ultimate wild card round where if you're banking on 1 seeds just to blindly go in there and keep doing what they've been doing, I think you're in for a rude awakening here.
Yeah, as we get to this point, like you said, there's going to no outcome is truly an upset if we actually think about it. All these teams deserve to be there. Alabama's been one of the top teams throughout the entire season. Is there one thing that you're focusing on, at least for today's games, that you think will be the difference maker to potentially Texas Tech or Alabama advancing? Is it Alabama's threes? Is it the defense? Is it rebounding? Is there one factor for either Texas Tech or Alabama that stands out to you that needs to be their X factor today?
Heck, Alabama, their method to victory is very, very simple because it's the exact same as it is every single game that they go out there. Hit your threes, right? I mean, they did rebound pretty well against St. Mary's. They played good defense in that game, but against BYU, despite the scoring differential, it's not like they D'd up and shut down BYU. They just made more shots than them. Heck, and that's going to happen when you hit 25 threes and 60 of the shots that you launch from the field are 3-pointers. And I do feel like that's a pretty clear-cut way to victory if you're Alabama. I do think it runs out today. I think Duke ends up kind of dominating them and gets it done. And then for Florida, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by the athleticism that Texas Tech has, even without Chance McMillan. I know he's a question mark. He may or may not play. I don't think it matters because even if he plays, I don't know if it's going to be quality minutes that he's out there producing. And when you are looking at just the depth from that standpoint, Texas Tech is by far one of the deepest teams that Florida has played all season long. And that's why you have depth to kind of mitigate a loss like a Chance McMillan in this spot.
So here's where I'm going to push back a little bit on what Tom was just saying. When it comes to these 4 games that we have, you go later on tonight, I think Duke is going to win. Clearly, we're looking at the graphic. You do too. You've got them laying the points. You take the 6.5. So you think not only a Duke win, an emphatic win. I think Duke, I'd put Duke in a money line parlay kind of situation. If Alabama wins, I'm not going to be shocked. You look at tomorrow, truly, Michigan State, Auburn, I think Auburn, but I'm not betting against Izzo this time of year. Houston, Tennessee, I genuinely don't have a clue who's going to win that game. I lean Houston, but I really don't know. Florida against Texas Tech, and maybe it is the McMillan factor. Maybe I am disrespecting Texas Tech. Maybe I'm putting too much into what I saw in the early portion of that game against Arkansas versus the late comeback where they absolutely had to get it done, obviously. I just think Florida, in this particular matchup, is in a class of its own. I don't see how the Gators don't win this game going away. I would absolutely lay the 6.5. I would consider alting them up to double digits. I think that Texas Tech puts up a fight in the opening half. I think this will be yet another case of the dog covering in the first half, as we have seen so consistently throughout this tournament. And ultimately, the better team is the better team in the second half, and Florida advances with relative ease.
Well, I'll caution you and kind of point back to the round of 32, where we were kind of saying the same thing about Florida taking on UConn. And UConn outplayed Florida for about 37 minutes of that ball game with more of a balanced style approach, D'ing up. Florida was missing shots early, and then down the kind of the stretch, it ended up being just some critical threes in transition from Florida that got it done. Well, Texas Tech is UConn on steroids, regardless of whether or not Chance McMillan ends up playing. And also, they're catching a little bit more points than, in terms of the actual final score of the UConn-Florida game as well. So I feel like Texas Tech is going to be in this thing from start to finish. And I actually kind of like the fact that a team had that adversity in the previous round and ended up kind of overcoming it. I think it just shows a little bit of momentum on their side.
So when it comes to the Texas Tech Florida total, we saw in the graphic there that you do like the Alabama Duke total, but how do you play the Florida Texas Tech total? Because if you think Texas Tech keeps it close, does that have you leaning on the under? We obviously know Florida's offense is unbelievable, could drop 90 points before you know it, but I would also lean on the under in that game.
Oh, 100%. And I think the only thing that would push it over necessarily would be a close game late. And Texas Tech is really good at the free throw line. They have a number of guys who are over 85%. And so if it does come down to that X factor of Texas Tech being in the lead, that could push it over. But if it is just kind of Texas Tech kind of clinging to maybe a 1.5 kind of possession differential, I do feel like this is going to go way under the total.
Texas Tech's individual total 74.5. Florida's is coming in at 81.5. Is there a team total you'd lean toward one way or the other?
I would lean towards the Florida team total going under. Personally, I do feel like this is a game that's played in the 70s rather than the 80s. And if it is played in the 80s, I would, and if you do think it's going to be, kind of an 80s type of game, I would take and lay the points with Florida. Obviously, that's not my viewpoint, but that would be my angle if that's kind of how you're viewing this game.
Right, and that's something that we often talk about, like trying to find the correlation. Like if it is going to be staying under, it's more difficult for a team to cover a larger spread. I'm also on the Alabama Duke under. I do have it at 172.5. I see it's up to 174.5. Would you be willing to buy back in, or what would you recommend to people if they don't have a play on this? Because everyone's expecting points, but I certainly side with the under. Are you waiting for 175.5, or would you wait for an in-game number?
I think the better strategy would be in game. And honestly, I don't even mind taking 172.5 under. I know that's kind of way off the original price, and that's unfortunate, especially when you're talking about an Elite Eight matchup where these numbers are going to be real tight to the line. But I do feel like this is a game where we just see a different form of Alabama. I don't think they're going to make 25 threes. I don't think they're even going to come relatively close to that number. And they're carrying the bulk of the weight in this number because Duke can play in a number of different styles. They're totally fine winning in the 70s, low 80s, and I do feel like that's going to serve as a detriment to Bama down the stretch.
Whether it's Florida, Texas Tech, or Duke, Alabama, again, both of these games are 6.5 point spreads with Florida and Duke favored. When it comes to in-game betting, because I don't think anyway that either of these games is going to be a situation where it's, wire to wire win. Like Duke, gets up 4-0 and never looks back kind of thing. Or Florida, same story. So that said, would you look for an in-game number for either team that you support to where it's either the favorite getting down to, -1.5 or the dog potentially getting up to plus 10.5?
I wouldn't look at Texas Tech in terms of if they're down early, like double digits or even 8 points, like multiple possessions. I wouldn't look to buy back in on Texas Tech. This is definitely a scenario where they need to keep it close in order to kind of cover any type of line, in my opinion.
We've got Rob Donaldson here with us. We've only talked about half the Elite Eight bracket. More coming.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on Sports. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We've got Rob Donaldson hanging out here with us and talking, of course, all things college basketball with the Elite Eight starting today. 2 games today, 2 tomorrow. We've been talking, Rob, about the 2 today. Let's get into the 2 tomorrow here a little bit. Houston and Tennessee. Again, a 1 versus a 2 in this one. What jumps out in this one is not the fact that Houston is laying 3.5 points, which, by the way, if forced to a side, I would support. What jumps out here is the insanely low total, which has been bet up just a little bit. We're looking at 123.5 as it stands right now. I'm looking at splits on one of the sports books, and it has the handle and bets each north of 90% to the over, because people are just looking at this number and saying, my God, what is going on? How does this number exist? Of course, we're going to get into the, mid 120s, low 130s at the very least. Look at these 2 teams. Here's where you caution people, though, and I know you know this, but for anyone out there that may not, these teams go at insanely slow paces. Houston is sitting at 360th in tempo this year. Tennessee, 345 in adjusted tempo. Okay, both these teams in the vicinity of 350th in the nation in adjusted tempo. And oh, by the way, they both sport top 3 defenses as well. So is under the play here, despite how incredibly low that number is.
I might shock you with this one. I don't think that it is. We've seen these 2 teams and matchups over the entire season always play the contrast to the other team, right? They're going up against teams that are going to be high volume shooters, and they have the perfect kind of counterbalance approach to win those types of game, or at least throw the other team off that sort of rhythm. In this type of game where both teams are going to be trying to do the exact same thing, I actually do feel like that's going to lead to a little bit more of a balanced approach from an offense and defense perspective. And also, when you look at Houston and Tennessee this year, yes, they can kind of rock it up and make it a slow kind of crawl type of game and a lot of physicality, but they've got some hoopers. I mean, Zakai Ziegler is a dog in the point guard position, offensively and defensively. Milo Suzon as well for Houston. And this is no longer, I think, a one-dimensional approach from Rick Barnes or Kelvin Sampson. I feel like they can kind of do it on both ends.
So when it comes to this game, my initial takeaway would be I want Houston to come out early, and I want to know your thoughts about this, because if they get out scoring early, this number is going to jump a little bit. I think there's a very real possibility that you can grab Tennessee in game at a 6.5, 7.5 number, and then they have a nice little pushback, and then you get Houston at 1.5 or 2.5. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think there's some room for a middle, maybe tight, because we're not dealing with a ton of points overall, but I think there's getting both sides of it could work.
You know, I think we saw a perfect blueprint with the Ole Miss-Michigan State game to just kind of a lesser degree, because these two kind of ramp it up in one direction more so than both of those teams. But a great head coaching battle here where there's going to be a lot of different runs from both sides, in my opinion. So to your point, you can catch a perfect pocket, whether or not you like Houston. They might fall down by 10 early. We kind of saw them, against Purdue in certain spots in this past game, go down by that type of deficit before going on a run, and then vice versa. If you like Tennessee, heck, they might get punched in the mouth first and end up being down 8 points and then kind of rally back. So I feel like this number, this 4.5, 3.5 type of line that's been bouncing back between, is true to the number or true to the result of this game. And so if it does kind of veer off that in any direction, pick your side before the game starts and then hunt that live line.
See, this feels like, Tom, a conversation we had going into the Super Bowl between Kansas City and Philadelphia. Take the points out of it for a moment and just say, all right, I think this is going to be kind of a game of runs. So I'm going to invest in Tennessee at right around plus 130 going into the game. I'm going to wait for them to jump ahead to, by 10 points 5 minutes into the game, and then Houston, I'm going to be able to get it plus money, Rob, on the money line, and I'm just going to have plus money on both sides, and I'm going to sit back, kick my feet up, have a drink, and profit no matter what.
Well, hey, if sports betting was a utopian world, would we all be sitting on a yacht in Aruba right now?
That's true. Very true. I think there's a realistic spot where you can play both sides, and obviously, we've talked about this before, but make sure to do this during commercial breaks, because obviously the broadcasts are a little bit delayed. Regardless of that, let's move on to the other game, Michigan State versus Auburn. A lot of people are talking about Tom Izzo. He's 10-0 versus the SEC, in tournament plays. Is that something you buy into? Do you buy into those types of narratives or those types of trends? Because 10-0 is great, but this is an Auburn team, which is awesome. I'm not saying they've been perfect, but they have been very good throughout the year. I lean on taking the points on Michigan State, but it's not like some type of conviction play.
I don't really play into the trends of conference versus conference, because you've got Duke as an outlier in the ACC, and with how many teams also fill out these conferences nowadays, it's not like every team is playing the same exact style. The Big Ten doesn't play slow anymore. The SEC is obviously very different as well, and we're kind of looking at it from that standpoint. How many Vanderbilts are playing into the trends in that category? You know what I mean? So I look at Michigan State, though. One of the trends I do buy into are coaching experiences in the Final Four, the Elite Eight, and Tom Izzo has a bulk of them. Bruce Pearl does not. I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn gets tight here, and they are laying a line of 5.5 where you have to be really sharp from the outset. Obviously, we saw them pouring on against Michigan late, but Michigan is a lot less athletic than Michigan State is, and I would say have kind of a little bit of an inferior coach. Dusty May is really great, but Tom Izzo is kind of in a class of his own. And 5.5 points, I'm willing to take it. I think Michigan State actually ends up winning this game outright.
So to your point, obviously, Michigan State not created equally, and we saw the 31-8 late second half run there by Auburn to kick it into gear, as you put it, against Michigan, and ultimately knocked the Wolverines out. And Janai Broome was incredible throughout that game. Went for 22 points, 16 rebounds before I can't remember if he fouled out late or was just subbed out when that game ultimately was decided. But it makes you wonder if games like that can serve as any sort of a wake-up call. It sounds crazy to say, I realize at this stage, but all right, Michigan, maybe we weren't ready for them in the way we thought we were going to be. Now we're prepared for Michigan State.
Well, if that's the case, they've had back-to-back wake-up calls with Creighton kind of taking them down to the wire, and then Michigan, two inferior opponents to Michigan State. So I just kind of feel like we're seeing the actual true depiction of how good Auburn actually is.
Interesting way to look at it. Rob Donaldson, again, professional handicapper. Get him on Twitter at RobDFB. Rob, you got time for a little break here, so sit back, relax, get those bets in, enjoy the games today, my friend.
Hey, appreciate you, boys.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's Betting Above the Rim college basketball today here on SportsGrid with Tom. I am Adam. Now, our thanks to Rob Donaldson. Great stuff out of him. We're going to have another guest coming up, Ryan McIntyre from the Sports Gambling Podcast Network at the top of the hour. But before we do that, Tom, I got to scratch an itch because I keep talking about, the lack of Cinderellas. It's so many people are on this. Oh, there's no Cinderellas. Oh, it's just the chalk. Here's the deal. This is not limited to the year of our Lord 2025. March Madness, as we knew it before, is dead. I think it's dead. I think Cinderellas are not coming back. There'll be aberrations. There'll be the anomaly, the occasional Cinderella, but we're not going to see too many of them going forward. And I'll tell you what, I think that's actually a good thing. So long, Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago. Bye-bye, Dunk City, Florida Gulf. We all enjoyed that a couple years back, obviously. Even last year, the 11 seed NC State. I enjoyed the Wolfpack run with the 9 straight wins through the ACC tourney and then on into March Madness and getting to the Final Four for the first time on the men's side since 1983. It was wonderful. It was wildly entertaining. But here's the thing that we don't talk about enough that the Cinderellas all have in common, okay? They lose. Cinderellas ultimately, they lose. They don't usually, like NC State, get to the Final Four. They bow out earlier. Some teams I was looking at earlier, all right? George Mason lost as an 11 seed to 3 seed Florida going back to 2006. Loyola Chicago, obviously. Shaka Sparks, VCU, they fell to 3 seeds. Other examples, 10 seed Davidson went down to a top seed as it should have as a double digit. 15 seeds. Oral Roberts, we remember Princeton, they got to the Sweet 16. Hell, St. Peter's in 2022, they actually did get to the Final Four. But again, ultimate anomaly. That is not a regular occurrence. They beat Kentucky in round 1, but then, Murray State, Purdue, fine. But then it's over. They fall at that point in time. And a lot of people thought, maybe this is the year. Maybe we're going to see whoever, Creighton, maybe Arkansas. John Calipari's there. He's not your typical Cinderella head coach. Calipari, look, he knocked out his old buddy Rick Pitino there in St. John's. They're going to go on a run. And you know what? He's done. they're done. Took them down to the wire. It got interesting, but they got knocked out. People wanted to buy in on Colorado State. Well, the committee got that one wrong. Shouldn't have been a 12 seed. They were in the betting market. They were favored against Memphis in round one. We shouldn't have even counted it. But again, they lasted a round. Drake, McNeese, no, doesn't sustain the way that a lot of people hoped would happen because the transfer portal and NIL. These are the reasons that your Cinderella stories are absolutely over. Why it is the year of the chalk, and that is something to get used to going forward. Consider this graphic that I saw online. I want you to look at here, the SportsGrid viewers, about exactly how we have gotten to this point versus where we were before, okay? The best players are at the best schools. From NCAA buzzer beaters and game winners, the Twitter account, it outlines where every Sweet 16 team starting five began. Michigan, completely unrecognizably, is that one that is second from the left on the top. It's no shock that Duke, Michigan State, Houston, even Purdue, most kids who started with the program are still at the program because these are, higher level institutions when it comes to obviously basketball. But other teams, you will see kids chasing the best deals at the best programs, transferring like crazy. They might play for 3 schools in as many years. They're no longer concerned with, having to sit out a year to transfer. You don't have to do it anymore with the portal and the negotiations of NIL. It has become a business. It's chasing top dollar. Coaches do it too. They're hopping around. How many coaches have we already seen here in tournament? They get eliminated and they sign on with a new and better program. You think Rick Pitino wanted to be at Iona? That was a punishment. You think Calipari really wants to be at Arkansas? Not the case. So here's why this is a good thing. Now we get the best of the best matchups. Auburn, Michigan State, Duke, Alabama, Florida, Texas Tech, Houston, Tennessee. Chalk. 4 top seeds, 3 twos, and the 1 3 seed, as we have discussed throughout. It's dominance. We all love the magic of the Cinderella story, obviously. It's a lot of fun. It's something that takes our breath away. It's what one shining moment is built around. But they're going away. The favorites are dominating as we have run through all of the numbers, and I am absolutely positively here for it because now we get Goliaths going head-to-head throughout the Elite Eight and every single round going forward.
Here's a tip. Let's say you bet big on a 4-game moneyline parlay. Your first 3 bets have hit, but you're a little nervous about the last game. Consider placing a separate bet against the team you have winning in your parlay. You're technically a winner either way. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
You studied the stats. You had the perfect bracket. Until your upsets turned into regrets. SportsGrid rides the highs and lows of every buzzer beater, bracket buster, and Cinderella story.
The Big Ten Freshman of the Year!
Our team brings you sharp insights, real-time reactions, and all the madness. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.